You're listening to LibraryCast with me, Jeremy Thompson-Smith, from Somerset Libraries, bringing to you Libraries from Home. In part one, we spoke to Ben and Beth from the Bookshop Band, and they told us about what they have been doing during lockdown, but more importantly, how they have supported Independent Bookshop Week, the week that celebrates independent bookshops.
Something that we think of every year. We wrote a song for it a few years ago for the Books in My Bag campaign as well, so we played that on Friday night.
Yeah, it's like a real celebration of Bookshops edition, so we tried to pick books and songs that were particularly relevant to books and selling books.
In today's part 2 edition, we look at the Bookshop Band's highlights. They tell us some of their highlights in their 10-year career, as well as giving us stories about books that they have been reading. Welcome to LibraryCast. Let's go back to some bookshop highlights over the years. You must have dozens, a shelf full of highlights. Drop in a few suggestions of things that when you look back, when Molly is 21 like my son, you can say, can we believe that we really did that? What has been some special moments for the group?
Oh, well, I will come back to UK bookshops. One thing is that we took Molly to America and did a tour of bookshops from New York to New Jersey, down to Albuquerque, New Mexico, and kind of back up through Denver and stuff. And I kind of can't believe we did that. I mean, I can't believe we were able to travel for a start, because that seems like a remote kind of thought. And just taking Molly along, and it was hard work, but we had some really special moments. One day was my birthday, where we woke up in New York and we had to travel to Albuquerque, but then we had to drive up to Durango. It's actually in Colorado, but just over the border, so through the desert from Albuquerque up to Durango, then into the mountains. And so Nick Bottomley, who runs Mr. B's Emporium of Reading Delights in Bath, he was there to meet us in Albuquerque, because he was there for this conference that they were holding for American bookshops, independent bookshops in Albuquerque. And he picked us up from Albuquerque Airport, but he had got a car that wasn't quite big enough for all our stuff. So they had to go, Ben and Nick had to go back and get a different hire car, and me and Molly had a birthday lunch in Albuquerque Sunport, as it's called, and then you came back with a bigger car, so we could fit all our stuff, all Molly's stuff, all our instruments in the car. And then Nick drove us up to Durango to Maria's bookshop, which was an amazing, lovely bookshop, and we were a bit late. But we got there and they'd managed to get a guy playing the ukulele just to kind of keep everyone happy and singing songs. And then we kind of crept in. Molly had fallen asleep, so we put her in her car seat in the back of the bookshop, and we got out, and we eventually got onto the stage, and there was a film crew there, and Nick introduced us, and it was lovely. And some of this you can hear on an album, which we'll talk about in a bit, but it was quite magical. And it was a really long day, because we'd had a time change. It was my birthday, and it was just going on and on and on, and we were so tired, but it was so magical. And also it was the night of the wolf blood moon, so we saw this amazing moon coming up on the way there, I think, out of the desert. And there were so many magical moments about that day. So
I think it was like 29 hours long, and probably awake for most of it.
I asked the Bookshop Band what music they were planning on releasing in the immediate future.
We're just about to release that album. It's coming out in August, actually. So we recorded all the concerts, including the one Beth talked about, and put it together as a live album, with each song recorded in a different American bookshop. And we did a couple of libraries as well on the tour. We played at Denver Public Library and the New York Public Library as well, which were really great.
I remember someone telling me about the lost words when I was working in Cheddar Library, and didn't really know very much about it. And then I opened this book up and I just thought, wow, what a beautiful book with Jackie Morris's beautiful illustrations and the wonderful words of Robert Macfarlane. And I just had to buy it for my goddaughter's Christmas present. But before I gave it to them, I had to read it. So as well as that as a highlight, you end up joining the musical soundtrack, the soundtrack of the book. Tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, so I was very lucky to be asked to join some musicians. So Corinne Polwart, Julie Fowlis, Rachel Newton, Chris Reaver, Jim Molyneux, Sekou Keita, and Kerry Andrew, who were like, when I saw this lineup, I was like, oh my goodness, amongst these amazing musicians. And we were asked to kind of get together in a house in Herefordshire to write some songs inspired by the lost words. And we were actually given the book by Ben's sister and Ben's half-sister's mum, and we hadn't heard of it before. And then I think that was for Christmas, and then that January or next year we were asked to write these songs. So just an amazing experience. But so for those of you who don't know the Lost Words book, it's basically some words which had spells created for them because the words had been taken out of a dictionary, and they were words such as acorn and bramble and conker and raven and newt, and all these words that are so important to us, especially right now when we're perhaps appreciating nature more than we've had a bit of more time to do that, and they were replaced with some more modern words. And so Jackie and Robert came together to create this beautiful book to bring some of those words back. And like you say, it's kind of caught on. So many people have been moved and touched by this, and we had the privilege of making this music to take that journey further and to kind of reach out to audiences and people to bring this nature back into people's lives, I suppose. So it's been an amazing project, really. And we had a tour cancelled this year, but we hope to do some more gigs next year. And we are going to write some songs inspired by the Lost Words too.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's exciting.
Yeah, I think that's official news, but I should probably check that.
Well, it's out there, but we'll keep that confined in Somerset County. Yes, yeah. The other thing I remember is when the Philip Pullman's Book of Dust came out, and it just made me think of you, both of you, having this special commission. And whenever I see the book, I don't think of Philip Pullman, as brilliant an author as he is. I think of both of you. Tell us about this, the most incredible commission that you had.
Oh, it was amazing. So the new trilogy was starting with La Belle Sauvage, and they'd planned this really quite spectacular launch in the Bodleian Library, where I think they put it out, like a raffle, almost like who was going to come, and so everyone around the world sort of put in for their tickets, and they basically had this sort of magical, as if it was the university where Lyra was growing up in, and they'd laid it out, this sort of wonderful banquet, and then at some point during the evening we went into the sort of the back library space, which is this beautifully resonant wooden, it's just the most amazing place to play in. And then we started off with a song, and then Philip talked about the book, and then we closed the event with a song, and it was probably the most nerve-wracking, exciting premiere of a song, because we hadn't played it before. We were in Mr. B's, we're always playing something for the first time, and it's terrifying. But suddenly, when you've got this sort of huge media presence, like I think it was going out live on various channels and things, and it's the first time we played it. Pretty much, it's
which is like all our gigs with it, all our kind of author gigs. It's always the first time we've played that song in front of the author, so that they are all scary, but that one particularly, I think, was.
What was quite funny about it is that, so normally we write the songs the day before or on the day of the event. Like, it's very focused, pragmatic, efficient use of time. Normally we've just finished the book, but with this one, we thought we'd finish it the day before to give us some time to practice, you know, because it was sort of so big. But they phoned us up a week before saying, could we hear the songs, please? Because obviously they're quite concerned that they're not rubbish. And we were like, mild panic, like, oh yeah, can we send them to you tomorrow? Okay, great. And then we just sort of wrote them overnight. Pretty much.
Yeah, well, also we found it harder to, because at this point Molly was 6 months old, we found it harder to find the time to write as well. So that's changed how we do things.
We're just discovering that as well. Like, you know, you don't preempt that. You're just like expecting to write, and all of a sudden you can't because someone else is demanding your attention.
Well, she was singing on them. She's definitely singing on the recordings anyway. And Philip Pullman gave her one of the first signed copies of the book as well. So.
Yeah.
We'll wrap up with a current book that you're reading, or that you would like to read as your next book. What's that, Ben?
For me, well, I've just finished reading this book here, The Spinning Heart by Donal Ryan, which is a sort of dark Irish humour. Do you know what? It reminded me of what was the book we did in Canada?
No Great Mischief.
No Great Mischief. Yeah, by Alexander MacLeod. It's kind of like an Irish version, not version, but you know, I put them together in a similar kind of thing. Just a story of a community, a story of just normal people in a particular situation. So this The Spinning Heart set in kind of the recession in Ireland in the 80s, 90s, because of the sort of all the housing boom and thing like that. But it's brilliant, and we're actually mid writing a song about that right now, which we're gonna put out in a week or so. So I'm just sometimes some of the greatest books, some of the hardest ones to respond to, because you're kind of at a loss almost. You're like, you've got so many things buzzing around your head. And I think with this one, because it's about something quite close, you know, Ireland's not too far away, and you know, we've been over there a lot, and obviously a lot of kinship with Ireland, and I want to get it right, and that's a problem. And I think with the songs we do, there is no right, you know, it's just our responses. It's an emotional thing, but I kind of feel with this one, I want to get it right, and maybe that's a problem. Maybe that's why it's taking me so long.
Also, the author has written in the book, he says, to the Bookshop Band, I can't wait to hear the song.
Which terrifies us, obviously, because we're like, okay.
And Beth, what would you like to read or just finished that you can mention?
I quite like to mention this book. It's called Surfacing by Kathleen Jamie, and she came to speak at the Wigtown Book Festival last year, and I had to get the book. It's about her life and journeys in her life, but she's a brilliant writer. She writes very, very well, and it's quite poetic, but it's kind of, she calls them essays, I suppose. But it's about her discovering. She goes off to various different countries and looks at archaeology and goes to a couple of digs. One, I'm going to get it wrong, I think she goes to one in Orkney, but the first one is in North America, and she just describes the way that these things come up, but it's not just about the history of things, and that puts you in a place in itself, a bit like, I don't know, when Robert Macfarlane, his book Underland, does a similar thing. It just puts you in a place as a human, as an individual, like as being part of this much bigger thing. You know, we're just these tiny specks when there's so much history before us and so much to go on with, but also with digging down into the earth. But just very beautifully written, and I really enjoyed her journey and discovering things about herself, as well as what she finds underground, and the people that she's just very good at talking to the people as well, and bringing out their stories, like the local people that live there and what those things mean to them.
For me, Wilkie Collins, maybe. that kind of Victorian yarn kind of writing. And actually, the Moonstone was the book that I just finished reading before Mr. B's asked us if we wanted to do music with the bookshop, and that book had just got me back into reading and like finding pure enjoyment out of reading. Transporting to another world, and you finish that book and you end up speaking in Victorian English.
Ben and Beth, the Bookshop Band, thank you so much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having us.
Thanks, Jim.
You have been listening to LibraryCast, your library podcast from Somerset Libraries, bringing to you Libraries from Home.